Hello, I'm Death's Arrow, and welcome to episode 25 of What I'm Thinking. In this episode, I will look at the Maus, a German super heavy tank known for being the heaviest fully enclosed armored fighting vehicle ever built. Is this tier 10 behemoth worth the grind? You'll soon find out. From a historical perspective, the Panzerkampfwagen 8 Maus was a prototype super heavy tank designed in 1942 and 43. The intent of the project was to develop a heavy panzer with the intention of countering potential Russian heavy designs that Hitler was convinced would appear in the spring of 1943. Priority would be given to the heaviest armor connected to the highest performance gun. Porsche would end up being contracted to design the vehicle, while Krupp would produce the hulls and turrets, with Alkit assembling the components. Porsche completed conceptual drawings in October of 1942. The tank would weigh 150 metric tons, carried on a set of 1,000mm wide tracks. Porsche listed both a 15cm L37 and a 12.8cm as gun options in a rear-mounted turret. The armor thickness would be 200mm front, 180mm upper sides, 100mm lower sides, 180mm rear, 100mm belly front, and 50mm belly rear. The suspension consisted of 12 double road wheels. The drivetrain was to be electrical like the Porsche Tiger prototype and would be designed to provide a maximum speed of 20 km per hour. Options for either a gasoline or diesel-powered engine were provided. The final decision to begin production on the Porsche Maus was made by Hitler at a conference with Albert Speer in January of 1943. It was at that conference that it was decided to mount the 12.8cm gun, as Hitler considered it the most suitable gun for the Maus, although a 15cm gun was projected as a future upgrade. Secondary armament would consist of a 7.5cm KWK L24 gun, although Hitler considered the secondary armament unnecessary because the Maus would be assigned escort tanks. A full-scale wooden model of the design was presented to Hitler in May of 1943. As you can see from the pictures, the turret still had an extended commander's cupola and a flamethrower system on the upper rear portion of the hull, neither of which ended up on the final design. Also of note is the external jettisonable 400-gallon fuel tank. Mass production began in July of 1943 with plans to produce 10 tanks per month. Bombing raids on factories in August of 1943 delayed production significantly and ultimately killed off the Maus project after only 2 chassis were completed. The first Maus prototype started factory trials in February of 1944 with a substitute turret to simulate its weight. Early trials showed a somewhat agile tank for its weight, although the road wheels failed early on and needed to be improved. The second prototype, while delivered in March of 1944, wouldn't be ready for trials until the middle of the year. Both prototypes received their production turrets in June of 1944. Weighing in at 188 metric tons, the Maus was incapable of crossing bridges and was forced to ford rivers. A second Maus was necessary to power it during crossings. The crew would receive air through a snorkel that was long enough to allow the Maus to be submerged up to 45 feet. While Porsche projected the Maus being capable of going 20 km per hour, the Maus prototypes were only able to achieve speeds of 13 km per hour on roads. Off-road speeds were far worse, as the tank's high ground pressure was a significant detriment. The Soviets captured both Maus prototypes before the end of the war and hauled them back to Russia in early 1946 for testing. The hull of Prototype 1 with the turret from Prototype 2 currently resides at the Kubinka Tank Museum. In World of Tanks, the Maus is a fortress on tracks. It's big and slow, but also very well armored. The tank has been in game since closed beta, and while many consider it long in the tooth compared to other Tier 10s, the 8.6 patch has been a real boon for it. Between the changes to premium ammo combined with arty nerfs, the Maus is more effective than it's been in a long time. The Maus's primary strength is its armor, which is considerably thick, although relatively flat. Proper angling improves the armor to borderline impenetrable levels for most tanks outside of Tier 10 tank destroyers. My general advice is to point one of the front corners of the tank at the enemy. If you can hide the lower front plate behind cover, all the better, as this is one of the 2 main weak spots. The other is the face of the turret to the left side of the gun. With a rear-mounted turret, the Maus excels at reverse angling, which is commonly but improperly called side-scraping. This technique involves using a hard piece of cover like a building to hide behind, then angling the back of the tank and turret just far enough out from behind cover to shoot the enemy. Only a small amount of the tank is exposed for enemies to shoot at, and the hull angle is extremely flat, which will induce bounces or track hits for no damage. This technique is valuable on urban maps, although can be employed in a variety of situations. Mobility is not a strength of the Maus. While it's not the slowest tank in the game, it's still very vulnerable to arty. Top speed is just over 20 km per hour, and rough terrain will slow the tank down considerably. Moving in the open is generally not advisable, although not quite as dangerous since the 8.6 arty nerfs. Between the slow hull and turret traverse, faster tanks can circle the Maus, but it's not something that I typically see employed. The Maus has the 12.8cm KWK-44 L55 gun, which is the same gun as the E75 and OSB. For a Tier 10 tank, this weapon is a bit underpowered compared to the other Tier 10 heavies. The rate of fire and penetration aren't anything special, although the gun is accurate enough to hit weak spots. I generally find it adequate and can make it work for me without the use of APCR premium rounds. Knowledge of frontal weak spots is the key to success, as flanking isn't a particularly viable tactic. The Maus is not a flexible tank due to its low speed and requires good decision making to succeed. It has the ability to clog choke points, break through flanks, and act as a damage sponge. You generally do not want to be in the open and definitely don't want to be alone if you can help it. Support is the key to survival, and I usually don't play this tank solo as you can't count on support in pub matches. Platooning with an E100 is a rather effective combination. For equipment on this tank, I recommend a rammer to improve reload rate, a vent to improve all crew skills, and a super heavy spall liner for arty protection. Equipment to improve aim time isn't particularly valuable on this tank due to the relatively slow speed along with the accuracy of the gun. A toolbox is another piece of equipment to consider to speed up track repairs. For crew skills, I recommend repair first to improve track repair times. Other useful skills are sixth sense, firefighting, clutch braking, off-road driving, situational awareness, safe stowage, and brothers in arms. It should be noted that the Maus requires an extra loader compared to its predecessor, the VK4502P OS-B. I ended up transferring a crewman in from another tank. It should also be noted that the Maus isn't a heavily used tank in Clan Wars anymore, as flexibility is a much more valuable trait in organized play. The tank was typically used to hold choke points or act as a damage sponge, and it can still function well within that role on the right maps. The first replay that we'll be looking at is a platoon battle on steps from August 6, 2013. I am platoon with Jovial Madness and his E100. As noted at the top of the loading screen, this is a standard battle. Reviewing tank composition for this battle reveals the following. This is a tier 10 match with 9 tier 10s and 4 tier 9s on each team. My team has a tier 8 and a tier 7 light tank, while the enemy team has 2 tier 7 lights. Each team has a single tier 10 arty piece. My team has an advantage with 6 TDs, 4 of which are tier 10, while the enemy team only has 3, 2 of which are tier 10s. The enemy team has a bit more mobility with a second Batchat and 2 T110 E5s. I don't recognize anyone in this battle. As the match loads in, Jovial and I have decided to go west to the 1 line. The rocks at G1, H1 are good cover for our big slow tanks. While arty isn't a major threat in this battle, we also don't want to be out in the open as our tanks have poor camo ratings and will be easy targets. As the battle gets underway, we immediately start heading west. We're going to take the J-row all the way down to J2 and then cut over to the rocks at H1. Jovial is in the lead, of course. His tank's faster. It doesn't take long for me to see the potential problem between the mini-map and turning my view. 2/3 of the team is going west, leaving poor coverage on the eastern flank as well as the middle of the map. I tell Jovial to lead the lemming train west and I'll turn back to anchor the middle. It's important that one of us keeps the flank moving, else the potential numbers advantage on that flank will likely be squandered. Pretty standard to push the low road if you have a numbers advantage, and the enemy is going to have that. We have a Batchat spotted at D0. Got a AMX 1375 IS-8 and 2 E100s headed along the 1-2 row. I'm going to try to line up the E100. I shoot over the top of his turret. We're in pretty serious trouble on the 0 line. Our JP100 takes a hard hit there. Got a E5, E4, Batchat, and T71. I am maneuvering behind the small rise. T30. Second Batchat is also over here. This flank's in big trouble. I'm going to set up in a good defensive position to try to support them. It doesn't take long to see that the enemy has pushed the eastern flank hard with at least 6 tanks, including 4 tier 10s facing an inferior force in the ditch. Jovial has already reacted and is coming back to support me. We'll make our stand from the small rise here and use the terrain and rocks for cover. Also have a T71 in the back. Just barely line him up. But he moves out of range and disappears before I can shoot. I've been spotted. Gonna get back behind the rocks. There's a Batchat on the ridge. Try to line him up. I don't get my shot off in time. He slips down the ridge. The flank's been completely broken. Take a hit from the T30 for some damage. Lining up the T30. Shoot him in the cupola. Get a hit. Jovial's made it back to support me. Trying to line up the Batchat. but he bounces off me and disappears before I can shoot him. Now have both E5s charging in on this position. Bounce a shot from the T30. Keeping an eye on this T110 that's trying to sneak around us. Pop him in the flank. Turning my armor towards him. You can see the angling I'm using here. Trying to get the kill shot on the E5, but he backs out. And he gets knocked down by our M103. Bounce another shot from the T30, trying to line up the E75, and I bounce. Jovial's taking some damage. Trying to line up the T30 again, going for the cupola, and I hit him again. And our Batchat already knocks him down. Enemy Batchat off in the distance, aimed in the other direction. Trying to line him up. And I get a hit. Still got an E5, an E4, and an E75 in front of us. We've lost our Batchat. Another E4 down at J0. Going after the E75 again. And I get a critical hit. Trying to line up the E4. But I can't line him up in time. Lost my gunner, and I healed him with a med kit. Knocked down the E5. Our Artie's doing a great job working this flank over. Trying to line up the E4 again. And I miss over the top of his cupola. Just barely had an angle there trying to aim around the wreck. Jovial's under some pressure from this E4. I bounce a shot from the E75, trying to get around the rocks, but the E4 evades me. I'm now backing up. Jovial gets knocked down by the second E4. I'm lining up the closer E4 right now. Take a hit to the side of my turret from the E75. Pop over the rise. Knock down the E4, firing from the hip. Now I'm going after the E75 again. Bounce a shot. Maintaining my angles while I reload. And I thought I was going to get him in the lower plate, but I bounced again. Actually, I'm switching to premium rounds now. Take a hit from the E75 to the track. And he drops below the rise before I can reload. And I already knocks him down. Just the E4 back in the corner. Gonna try to line him up. He knocks down our E4. And already knocks him down before I can get into position. With a lot of help from Artie, I'm able to survive the enemy's assault but lose Jovial. Both teams are now down to 3 tanks, but the enemy team has a significant advantage in both mobility and firepower with their autoloaders. Staying relatively close together is important right now so we can support each other and try to keep the bats from swarming us. According to reports from our teammates, both Batchats are one-shottable and the T-54E1 is AFK. I'm considering my options, discussing things over TeamSpeak with Jovial. I consider charging in after the enemy, but I know that's a mistake. We need to wait, settle in, and get the Batchats to come to us, and try to stay close enough together where we can support each other from getting swarmed by the enemy. So we get to the waiting game, which is not a personal strong suit. I'm going to play things cautiously, cover the M103, protect our Artie. Was thinking about charging again there for a second, but thought better of it. I've also got the concern that the bat chats will circle back around and try to come up the other side of the map. They have enough mobility to come at us from any direction. Park behind this rock. Push my lower plate up against the rock and just waiting here. There's really no disadvantage to me moving around. My tank has horrible camo no matter what I do, and there's no arty, so I'll know when I'm spotted. And then we'll react accordingly. Just a little antsy here. I'm not a big fan of sitting static and waiting for the enemy to press on us. Just looking at my turret for a second, saw that I took a couple hits on the turret from that defensive exchange. Jovial had mentioned that the M103 was just swiveling his turret back and forth. I wanted to take a look and see what he was doing. Just waiting here. It's the smart move considering the bat chats are more mobile than us. Based on a comment from one of my teammates, I decided that I need to move further east in order to make sure the bat chats don't sneak through the zero line. I use this rock to cover the lower plate and keep an eye on the ditch. From my former position, they could definitely sneak up and through and get to arty pretty quickly without me being able to intervene. Remaneuvering a little bit. Not a big fan of waiting, but I do not have an option here. Taking a look at where my tank has been shot, keeping an eye on the other side of the map. I have noticed that our arty has begun to move up the zero line. After several minutes of inactivity, our arty, unannounced, has decided to push up the zero line. I make the call to push with him, half expecting to run into the enemy bat chats. Pushing across the field is dangerous, but will give me the opportunity to spot the bats if they're in the field. Best case scenario, they're on the other flank still, and we can push to cap. Hanging the arty out to dry is not a good move. Bat chats would tear him apart. Certainly slower. And it's very strange to see a mouse charging the field in steps. And there is a bat chat at J3. M103 is maneuvered into the field. He's headed back to create the bat chat. Looks like arty's getting set up over there to start firing on the bats. I'm continuing to maneuver to cap. Second bat is unaccounted for at the moment. This is one of the advantages of XVM. I can tell when the other bat is redeployed like he has now. He's down at K2. Arty's firing on their position. I have no idea if he's getting hits or not. I can't tell. I'm too far away. I'm going to continue to press on the enemy cap. Both bat chats could make it back to cap right now if they wanted to. Looks like they're pretty committed to fighting the M103. And there's the AFK T-54E1. And I have been spotted. Pause for half a second, take a shot at the T-54E1 and get a hit. I'm going going to move in here and finish him off. Without pausing, I shoot on the move and knock him down. Batchat has entered the cap. I'm also in cap. The Batchat and I only have to sit here for 40 seconds, and the bats have not begun to maneuver back towards us, so it's unlikely they'll make it. While the enemy has taken down our M103, the Arty and myself are capping out the base. In case they manage to make it back to defend cap, I create a wedge with the destroyed enemy T-54A1 to protect our Arty from fire. This is actually something I've seen used in Clan Wars before. And we cap out the enemy base for the win. Looking at the after action screens, I destroyed 3 tanks, damaged 4 more, hit 11 of 14 shots for 2,828 points of damage, and earned 1,580 experience before the double. I also earned a steel wall medal. Please note that the values listed for XP and credits are non-premium values. Overall, this battle got off to a rough start with poor team distribution between the flanks. This left the eastern flank badly underdefended. Recognizing the issue, I quickly turned around in case the enemy decided to push that flank. Pretty much on cue, the enemy rolled the eastern flank, easily crushing all our defenders in their path. I set myself up in a good defensive position and forced the enemy to come dig me out. Jovial had made it back to base, and we worked over and defeated the attackers thanks to some timely assistance by our teammates and especially Arty, who racked up 4 kills in the defensive effort. With the score now tied, but our team outgunned, we settled in to wait for the Batchats to attack, staying relatively close together so that they couldn't swarm us. The enemy bats weren't particularly aggressive, likely due to their low health. When our Arty decided to make a push for the enemy base, I followed, moving across the open field. While this was a bit dangerous, leaving the Arty unsupported would have been a mistake if the bats had circled back. We then capped out the enemy base to finish off the comeback and win the match. The second replay that we'll be looking at is a platoon battle on Sand River from July 22nd, 2013. I am platoon with Jovial Madness and Midas Touch in their E100s. Please note that this is an 8.6 patch battle. As noted at the top of the loading screen, this is a standard battle. Reviewing tank composition for this battle reveals the following. This is a tier 10 battle with 7 tier 9s and 2 tier 10s on each team. My team has 5 tier 8s while the enemy team has 4. My team has a single tier 7 while the enemy team has 2. No Arty in this battle. The enemy team has a mobility advantage with 4 mediums and 3 light tanks while my team has a single light tank. I don't recognize anyone in this battle. As the match loads in, our options are somewhat limited. An open map like this is not favorable for big slow tanks. The lack of Arty certainly helps, of course. Our plan is to go to the city in the middle of the map and attempt to control the southern flank. I'll have to be careful as the enemy can encircle the city and snipe from many different directions. And we immediately start heading east. Jovial has to fight through a couple friendlies. We're going the other direction. We'll need to press right for town. The enemy can get shots on us as we head into town from the ridge over at G8. Early team distribution is not favorable. Not very many tanks headed north. Unsurprisingly, I have an IS-8 trying to push my tank. A 50-ton tank will have little effect on the 190-ton Maus, and is more likely to damage himself than anything else. I'm really not a fan of players who do this, and would much rather he make himself useful by getting into the battle rather than waste his time. Team distribution already looks bad as only 4 friendly tanks are in the north. I've already given my platoon mates a heads up and we keep pushing into town. We'll have to keep an eye on the minimap and be prepared to react when they get overwhelmed. Enemy had a T-34, an IS-7, and another tank headed up the 0 line. Enemy 50B spotted at base. We have a WZ-132 in front of us and an E-100. IS-8 still pushing me. We've lost our T-71 in the north. There are only 2 tanks committed far north and a T-32 in the middle. Definitely under-defended. WZ-132 was climbing the hill a little bit, and I snap a shot off and knock him down. Enemy T-69 was in the open, he took a hit. The enemy is behind the ridge, so I don't have any shots. We knocked down the enemy T-71, so we currently have a 1-tank lead. The enemy has a T-34-1, a Leopard 1, and an M103 spotted in the north at the moment. With the north already in trouble, Jovial and Midas begin to pull back towards Cap. Splitting up makes the most sense here rather than significantly depleting this flank of top-tier firepower. As I'm the slowest member of our platoon, it makes the most sense for me to stay behind and anchor this flank. Begin to advance into the city. I have a flotilla of tanks around me, which is going to be a bit problematic, as they will impede my ability to move around. Moving up some more. I'm going to go further into town now. There's the enemy T-69, which is at 9 hit points. Just a small gap between the buildings. I'm trying to line them up. Wiggling, and I can't get to him before he disappears. And I thought I had an opening on him, and I shoot and I hit the top of the dune. I've got an FE-215B on this flank. Get a clear shot at the T-69's turret, and I bounce. I have a Tiger II back at K9. Enemy 50B is in the open. He bounced a shot on me, re-angling my armor and lining him up. I get a hit. He bounces off me again. Friendly IS-8's behind me, blocking my escape path. But I block another shot from the 50B, lining up to shoot him again. And I get a hit. And a friendly hits him as well. Bounced a shot from the side, I think from the 215B. Not sure what hit me there, but I bounced it as well. Lining up the 50B. Calling for supporting fire as well. He's sitting out in the open and likely reloading, trying to get the kill shot on him. And our M103 knocks him down. Now turn my attention back to the enemies in front of us. Try to shoot the FV-215B and I miss over the top of his turret. Backing up behind this building a little bit to reestablish my angles. Shoot the E100 and I bounce. Trying to shoot the 215B now. And I miss. I'm going to use this building in front of me as cover still. And I'm re-angling here to get my front plate behind the building. Trying to shoot the top bar on the E100. I miss over the top of him. We're currently losing this match by 3 tanks. Jovial and Midas are covering Cap. They're the only ones left now. And I'm still anchoring this town team. Pushing up. Trying to line up the E100. And I end up shooting our M103 in the back of his turret. That is the danger of trying to shoot on the run like I sometimes like to do in this tank. No time to apologize. Lining up the T-69 and I knock him down. Back behind the buildings. Keeping half an eye on that Tiger II over there behind the dunes. Gonna try to knock down that 215B. And I hit him in the cupola and knock him down. With the enemy's northern push stonewalled by Jovial and Midas, the enemy has shifted tanks up to the top of the ridge overlooking town. This isn't really where I want to be as I'm forced to take hits to my weaker side armor as well as a hit to my ammo rack. I'm using this building to my left to keep cover from them. I back up, try to line up the E4, and I hit him, probably in the cupola. As the E100s have gone behind the dune, I'm now rotating my armor towards the enemies on the ridge. Trying to line up the E4 again, and I miss over the top of his turret. We're currently down by 2 tanks. E-100s have jumped over the dune, knocked down the lower health one. Take another hit in the flank. I'm charging the other E-100. He is focused on our IS-8. Get a hit in the flank. Shooting from the hip there. Continuing to advance. Line him up from behind. Shoot him in the back of the hull. Get my angle set up on him. Bounce a shot from the ridge. The E-100 is trying to escape around the building. Line him up. I'm able to shoot the back corner of him and knock him down. Have the M103 on the ridge in front of me. He is not paying attention to me any longer. He's now paying attention to Midas Touch. Also have a Leopard up on the ridge. Lining up the Leopard. I get a hit and our IS-7 knocks him down. M103 tries to hit me and I bounce him. I bounce a shot from the 1390. Got pretty good angles right now. Lining up the M103. And I bounce. Lining up the M103 again. Still reloading. I can see the side of his turret. He pulls forward and I pop him in the side. 1390 is advancing. Trying to get a shot at the M103, but he drops behind the rocks. And he exposes the back of his turret, but I miss. Trying to line him up again. He's moved out of my line of fire. And I begin to advance towards the enemy base. We are now leading this match by 1 tank. Enemies down to an IS-7, M103, and an AMX 1390. Myself and the IS-7 are advancing on the enemy base. Jovial knocks down the IS-7. It's unlikely I'm going to get back into this battle at this point. Jovial might have seemed to have that side of the map well covered. Our IS-7 jumps on cap, starts capping the base. I'm not going to bother. I want to see if I can get another shot on that 1390. Midas knocks down the M103. Jovial kills the AMX 1390 and we win the match. Looking at the after action screen, I destroyed 5 tanks, damaged 5 more, hit 19 of 23 shots for 4,585 points of damage, and earned 1,690 experience before the double. Please note that the values listed for XP and credits are non-premium values. Overall, this match, much like the previous replay, got off to a rough start due to the majority of the team heading south, leaving 4 tanks to handle the northern flank. Once we knew the enemy had pushed a significant number of tanks north, both Jovial and Midas pulled back to defend base, leaving me to anchor the southern flank from town. I played things conservatively, as I knew that I was outgunned, forcing the enemy to expose themselves to get at me and using the buildings in town for cover. As the enemy's northern push evaporated, they shifted tanks to the cliff overlooking town trying to get flank shots. This move backfired because the enemy's remaining town team tried to flank around, allowing me to rotate my armor towards the enemy. Once the E-100s pushed around, they made the error of going after weaker allies, allowing me to wipe them out. We then easily rolled the remaining enemies for the win. Thank you for watching this episode of What I'm Thinking. Stay tuned for another episode soon. In the next episode, I will take a look at the T-28, an American heavy tank destroyer that's slow but well armored with a gun that delivers the goods.